Hello, and welcome to our radio drama presentation of The Princess Bride. Please note that this is a live performance, and the cast has had no rehearsal.
You feeling any better?
A little bit.
Guess what?
What?
Hey, how's the sickie, huh? Here, let me pinch your cheek.
I think I'll leave you two pals.
Brought you a special present.
What is it?
Open it up.
A book?
That's right. When I was your age, Twitch.tv was called Books. And this is a special book. It's the book my father used to read to me when I was sick, and I used to read it to your father, and today I'm going to read it to you.
Has it got any sports in it?
You kidding? Fencing, fighting, torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes, true love, miracles.
It doesn't sound too bad. I'll try and stay awake.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's very nice of you. Your vote of confidence is overwhelming. All right, let's see. The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern. Chapter 1. Buttercup was raised on a small farm in the country of Florin. Her favorite pastimes were riding her horse and tormenting the farm boy that worked there. His name was Wesley, but she never called him that. His name was Wesley. Isn't that a wonderful beginning? Never.
Yeah, it's really good.
Nothing gave Buttercup as much pleasure as ordering Wesley around. One day, she stood by her horse, holding the reins, while Wesley in the stable doorway looked at her. Buttercup was in her late teens. She didn't care much about clothing and hated brushing her long hair, so she wasn't as attractive as she could have been. But she was still probably the most beautiful woman in the world.
Farm boy, polish my horse's saddle. I want to see my face shining in it by morning.
As you wish.
Wesley was perhaps half a dozen years older than Buttercup, and maybe as handsome as she was beautiful. As you wish was all he ever said to her. Another day, Buttercup approached him with two large buckets while he was outside chopping wood.
Farm boy, fill these with water. Please.
As you wish.
As she walked away from him, Wesley's eyes stayed on her. She stopped and turned toward him, but he looked away, and now it was her eyes that were staying on him. That day, she was amazed to discover that when he was saying, "As you wish," what he meant was, "I love you." And even more amazing was the day that she realized she truly loved him back.
Farm boy, fetch me that pitcher.
The pitcher was one she could have easily reached herself, but Wesley got it for her anyway. Even after Wesley handed the pitcher to Buttercup, the two stood very close to each other, gazing into each other's eyes.
As you wish.
The two stepped outside, and as the red glow of the sunset painted the sky, they shared true love's first kiss.
Hold it. What is this? Are you trying to trick me? Where's the sports? Is this a kissing book?
Wait, just wait.
When does it get good?
Keep your shirt on. Let me read. Wesley had no money for marriage, so he packed his few belongings and left the farm to seek his fortune across the sea. The day Wesley was to leave on his journey, they stood together near the farm gate, locked in an embrace. It was a very emotional time for Buttercup.
Oh, I don't believe this.
I fear I'll never see you again.
Of course you will.
But what if something happens to you?
Hear this now. I will always come for you.
But how can you be sure?
This is true love. You think this happens every day?
He smiled at her, and she smiled back. They kissed and held each other close once more before Wesley departed. Wesley didn't reach his destination. His ship was attacked by the dread pirate Roberts, who never leaves captives alive. When Buttercup got the news that Wesley was murdered,
Ooh, murdered by pirates is good.
she went into a room and shut the door, and for days she neither slept nor ate.
I will never love again.
5 years later, the main square of Florence City was filled as never before to hear the announcement of the great Prince Humperdinck's bride-to-be. The prince, a man of incredible power and bearing, stood in his royal robes on a castle balcony with 3 others behind him, an old couple with crowns, the aging king and queen, as well as a dark-bearded man who seemed the prince's match in strength, Count Rugen, one of the Prince Humperdinck's most trusted advisors and confidants. The prince raised his hands to calm the cheering crowd.
My people, a month from now, our country will have its 500th anniversary. On that sundown, I shall marry a lady who was once a commoner like yourselves, but perhaps you will not find her common now. Would you like to meet her?
The answering yes boomed like summer thunder, and a figure began to walk into view at the castle entrance. If there is such a thing as collective action, then this crowd collectively held its breath. The figure came into view at the castle archway. It was Buttercup, and she was resplendent.
My people, the Princess Buttercup.
As she descended the stairs and started to move amongst the people, the crowd did a very strange thing. With no instruction at all, they suddenly went to their knees. The newly crowned princess stood immobile among the subjects, blinking back tears. Buttercup's emptiness consumed her. And although the law of the land gave Humperdinck the right to choose his bride, she did not love him. Despite Humperdinck's reassurance that she would grow to love him, the only joy she found was in her daily ride. Every afternoon, she would take her favorite horse and tour the woods near the palace, a lovely, quiet, deserted area that brought her peace. One day, during a ride, she encountered 3 strange men in the forest.
A word, my lady.
The men stood close together on the path, the waters of the Florin Channel behind them. These 3 were not your everyday commuter types. Standing on the left was a tiny man with the most angelic face. Beside him was a Spaniard, standing tall and taut as a blade of steel. The third was a man that could only be described as a giant.
We are but poor, lost circus performers. Is there a village nearby?
There is nothing nearby, not for miles.
Then there will be no one to hear you scream.
The small man nodded to the giant, who reached over and touched a nerve on Buttercup's neck. The start of a scream was all she managed before she slumped over unconscious. The 3 took the horse and their hostage a short way down the river, where a sailboat was moored. The Spaniard busied himself getting the boat ready, and the giant carried Buttercup, unconscious, aboard. The small man ripped some tiny pieces of fabric from an army jacket and tucked them into the saddle of Buttercup's horse.
What is that you're ripping?
It's fabric from the uniform of an army officer of Gilder,
Who's Gilda?
the country across the sea, the sworn enemy of Florin. Go!
He slapped the horse on the rear, sending it galloping back the way Buttercup came.
Once the horse reaches the castle, the fabric will make the prince suspect the Gildarians have abducted his love. When he finds her body dead on the Gilder frontier, his suspicions will be totally confirmed.
You never said anything about killing anyone.
I've hired you to help me start a war. That's a prestigious line of work with a long and glorious tradition.
I just don't think it's right, killing an innocent gal.
Am I going mad, or did the word think escape your lips? You were not hired for your brains, you hippopotamic landmass.
I agree with Fezzik.
Oh, the sod has spoken. What happens to her is not truly your concern. I will kill her. And remember this. Never forget this. When I found you, you were so slobbering drunk, you couldn't buy brandy.
The small man then turned to the giant, clearly unbothered by their difference in stature.
And you! Friendless, brainless, helpless, hopeless! Do you want me to send you back to where you were? Unemployed in Greenland?
As the short man walked away, the Spaniard walked up to Fezzik, who was very distressed at the insults he had just received.
Vizzini. He can fuss.
Fuss. I think he liked to scream at us.
Probably he means no harm.
He's really very short on charm.
Got a great gift for rhyme.
Yes. Some of the time.
Enough of that!
They began sailing down the channel, their voices carried on the wind.
Fezzik, are there rocks ahead?
If there are, we'll all be dead.
No more rhymes now! I mean it!
Anybody want a peanut?
Ah!
They continued sailing through the night, racing across the dark waters of the Florian Channel. The Spaniard at the helm, Fezzik stood near the now conscious princess, and Vizzini sat on a stool on the other side of the boat.
We'll reach the cliffs by dawn.
The Spaniard nodded, looking behind the ship.
Why are you doing that?
Making sure nobody's following us.
That would be inconceivable.
What you think, you will be caught. And when you are, the prince will see you all hanged.
Of all the necks on this boat, Highness, the one you should be worrying about is your own.
The Spaniard looked over his shoulder once more, to Vizzini's annoyance.
Stop doing that. We can all relax. It's almost over.
You're sure nobody's following us?
As I told you, it would be absolutely, totally, and in all other ways inconceivable. No one in Gilder knows what we've done, and no one in Florin could have gotten here so fast. Out of curiosity, why do you ask?
No reason. It's only I happen to look behind us and something is there.
What?
Vizzini made his way to the stern of the boat. It was hard to see, for the moon was behind the clouds. The wind whistled, the waves pounded against the boat, and suddenly it had all gone ominous. The three men squinted, trying desperately to see. At that moment, they were all holding their breath. In the darkness behind them, there was still nothing to be seen. It was still ominous, but now it was eerie too. Then the moon slipped through the clouds, and and the Spaniard was right. Something was very much there. A sailboat with a great billowing sail, black, was a good distance behind them, but was closing the gap.
Probably some local fisherman out for a pleasure cruise at night through eel-infested waters.
Suddenly, there was a loud splash, and the men turned to see Buttercup in the water, swimming away.
Go in! Get after her!
I don't swim.
I only dog paddle.
Ah! Veer left!
The boat began to turn, but far too slowly for Vizzini's liking.
Left! Left!
Buttercup was still close to the boat as the wind died, and as it did, something new was heard. A not too distant, high-pitched shrieking sound. Buttercup stopped and treaded water.
Do you know what that sound is, Highness? Those are the shrieking eels! If you don't believe me, just wait. They always grow louder when they're about to feed on human flesh.
The sounds got louder and more terrifying.
If you swim back now, I promise no harm will come to you. I doubt you'll get such an offer from the eels.
A razor-toothed eel poked its head out of the water and hissed at the princess. Buttercup was a gutsy girl and remained silent, even as the shrieking got louder and another gigantic, dark creature slithered past. Was she scared? Sure. Petrified? Who wouldn't be? But she made no reply. Then one of the eels zeroed in on her. She saw it a short distance away, starting to close. Buttercup froze, trying not to make a movement of any kind. The eel slithered closer, closer, and Buttercup knew then there was nothing she could do. It was over, all over. The eel opened its mouth wide, made a terrible noise, and she doesn't get eaten by the eels at this time.
What?
The eel doesn't get her. I'm explaining to you because you look nervous.
Well, I wasn't nervous. Well, maybe I was a little bit concerned, but that's not the same thing.
Because I can stop now if you want.
No, you could read a little bit more if you want.
Do you know what that sound is, Highness? Those are the shrieking eels.
We're past that, Grandpa. You read it already.
Oh my goodness. I did. I'm sorry. Beg your pardon. Let's see. She was in the water. The eel was coming after her. She was frightened. The eel started to charge her. And then, just as the eel was about to clamp down, a large fist pounded the eel on the head, knocking it unconscious before easily lifting Buttercup back into the boat.
Put her down. Just put her down.
I think he's getting closer.
He's no concern of ours. Sail on.
Vizzini turned to Buttercup with a sneer.
I suppose you think you're brave, don't you?
Only
They continued sailing, and by dawn the other ship was close enough that they could see it was being sailed by a man in black. He wore black pants, a black shirt, a black bandana, even a black cloth eye mask, and his boat almost seemed to be flying.
Look, he's right on top of us. I wonder if he's using the same wind we are using.
Whoever he is, he's too late. See? The Cliffs of Insanity!
The cliffs were aptly named. They rose straight up, sheer from the water, impossibly high.
Hurry up! Move the thing! And then that other thing! Move it!
As the two sailboats raced for the cliffs, the man in black closed in, faster than ever, but not fast enough. The Spaniard sailed with great precision straight at the cliffs and moored the boat against the cliffside. A thick rope reached all the way to the top and was waiting for them.
We're safe. Only Fezzik is strong enough to go up our way. He'll have to sail around for hours till he finds a harbor.
The Spaniard strapped a harness on Fezzik, then lifted Buttercup and Vizzini into the harness before getting in himself. Then Fezzik began ascending the rope, carrying them all along with him as he went, hand over hand. The man in black made his way to the cliffside only minutes later, but Fezzik was already a third of the way up. The man in black began to climb as well. He was impossibly far behind, but the way he went, you'd think he'd know that, because up he flew the rope like lightning.
He's climbing the rope. And he's gaining on us.
Inconceivable! Faster!
I thought I was going faster.
You were supposed to be this colossus! You are this great, legendary thing! And yet he gains!
Well, I'm carrying 3 people, and he's only got himself.
I do not accept excuses. I'm just going to have to find myself a new giant, that's all.
Oh, don't say that, Vizzini, please.
Fezzik's arms began to slow, but the man in black still worked as before. If anything, he had sped up. Fezzik's lead was getting smaller and smaller.
Did I make it clear that your job is at stake?
Eventually, Fezzik made it to the top, though the man in black was less than 100 feet behind them. The top of the cliff was covered in sand, but also what looked like the ruins of a castle or fortress. Vizzini leapt off the giant, took out a knife, and cut the rope from the great rock that held it in place. The rope slithered across the ground and out of sight, like a great serpent at last going home. Fezzik and the Spaniard looked over the cliff edge and were shocked to see that the man in black was still there, clinging to the cliffside, a mere 50 feet from the top.
Oh, he has very good arms.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable!
You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
They looked at each other, then down again, as the man in black began scaling the cliffside.
God, he's climbing.
And so he was. Very slowly he made his way upwards, sometimes a foot at a time, sometimes an inch.
Whoever he is, he's obviously seen us with the princess. Must therefore die. Fezzik, you carry her. We'll need to head straight for the Gilder frontier. Catch up when he's dead. If he falls, fine. If not, the sword.
I'm going to duel him left-handed.
You know what a hurry we're in.
It's the only way I can be satisfied. If I use my right, over too quickly.
Oh, have it your way.
You be careful. People in masks cannot be trusted. Well, unless it's a face mask during a pandemic, then you can trust them because they're being considerate for your safety. But he's only wearing an eye mask, so do not trust him.
I'm waiting!
Fezzik nodded and hurried after Vizzini while the Spaniard began pacing and shaking his hands loose. After practicing a few of his well-honed fencing skills with his left hand, he grew impatient and made his way back to the edge of the cliff, only to see the man in black barely a few inches closer, to the top than before.
Hello there! Slow going?
Look, I don't mean to be rude, but this is not as easy as it looks, so I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't distract me.
Sorry.
Thank you.
The Spaniard stepped away, drew his sword, and loosened up with a few perfect thrusts, but seconds later resheathed and looked eagerly over the edge again.
I do not suppose you could speed things up?
If you're in such a hurry, you could lower a rope or tree branch or find something useful to do.
I could do that. In fact, I've got some rope up here. But I do not think you will accept my help, since I am only waiting around to kill you.
That does put a damper on our relationship.
But I promise I will not kill you until you reach the top.
That's very comforting, but I'm afraid you'll just have to wait.
I hate waiting. I could give you my word as a Spaniard.
No good. I've known too many Spaniards.
Is there any way you'll trust me?
Nothing comes to mind.
I swear, on the soul of my father, Domingo Montoya, you will reach the top alive.
Throw me the rope.
The son of Domingo Montoya dashed to the giant rock where the rope was originally tied, grabbed the remainder, and hurled it over the edge, lowering it down to the man in black, who went and climbed the rest of the way up.
Thank you.
The man in black began to unsheath his sword, but the Spaniard gently raised his hand.
We'll wait until you're ready.
Again, thank you.
The man in black returned his sword to his scabbard and sat on the large boulder that once held the rope. He tugged off his leather boots and was amazed to see several large rocks tumble out.
I do not mean to pry, but you don't by any chance happen to have 6 fingers on your right hand?
Do you always begin conversations this way?
Father was slaughtered by a 6-fingered man. He was a great sword maker, my father. When the 6-fingered man appeared and requested a special sword, my father took the job. He slaved a year before he was done.
The man in black raised his hand and showed only 5 fingers. Then the Spaniard, the son of Domingo Montoya, stood, drew his sword, and delicately held it out to the man in black. The blade was perfect. The hilt was made of gold with ornate patterning, set with precious stones.
I have never seen its equal.
The 6-fingered man returned and demanded it, but at 1/10 his promised price. My father refused. Without a word, the 6-fingered man slashed him through the heart. I loved my father, so naturally challenged his murderer to a duel. I failed. The 6-fingered man did leave me alive, but he gave me these.
The man lightly ran a finger over his cheeks, each of which had scar lines.
How old were you?
I was 11 years old. When I wasn't strong enough, I dedicated my life to the study of fencing. So the next time we meet, I will not fail. I will go up to the 6-fingered man and say, "Hello, My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
You've done nothing but study swordplay.
More pursuit than study lately. You see, I cannot find him. It's been 20 years now, and I am starting to lose confidence. I just work for Vizzini to pay the bills. Not a lot of money in revenge.
The man in black stood and handed the sword back to its owner.
Well, I certainly hope you find him someday.
You are ready then?
Whether I am or not, you've been more than fair.
You seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you.
You seem a decent fellow. I hate to die.
Bean!
And on that word, the two of them began one of the greatest sword fights of all time. The other happens later on. And right from the beginning, it looked different than most. They both held their swords in their left hand and didn't stand too close to each other. None of that swords crossing on guard garbage. Each time one made even the tiniest feint, the other countered. They started to circle, feinting here, feinting there, and then they began to duel in earnest. Their swords crossed, then again and again. The sound came so fast it was almost continual. Inigo pressed on, forcing the man in black to retreat up a rocky incline.
You're using Bonetti's defense against me, huh?
I thought it fitting, considering the rocky terrain.
Naturally, you must expect me to attack with Capoferro.
Naturally, but I find Tybalt cancels out Capoferro, don't you?
Unless the enemy has studied his Agrippa, which I have.
The two men were almost flying across the rocky terrain, never losing balance, never coming close to stumbling. The battle raged with incredible finesse, first one, then the other gaining the advantage. And by now it was clear this wasn't just two athletes going at it. This was two legendary swashbucklers in their prime. Incredibly, the action began going even faster than before, as Inigo slowly forced to the edge of the cliff. He attempted to fight back, but the man in black kept the advantage, forcing Inigo closer and closer to death.
You are wonderful.
Thank you. I've worked hard to become so.
I admit it. You are better than I am.
Then why are you smiling?
Inches from defeat, Inigo was, in fact, all smiles.
Because I know something you don't.
And what is that?
I am not left-handed.
Inigo threw his sword into his right hand, and immediately the tide of the battle turned. The man in black, stunned, did everything he could to keep Inigo by the cliff edge, but it was no use. Slowly at first, and then faster, he began to retreat. Inigo was in control, and the man in black became desperate as Inigo switched styles for the dozenth time. The fight made its way to a rocky staircase, and the man in black retreated like mad up the steps, unable to stop Inigo. He made every feint, tried every thrust, letting go with all he had left. Everything failed.
You're amazing.
I ought to be after 20 years.
The man in black was smashed into a stone pillar, his sword pinned under Inigo's.
There's something I ought to tell you.
Tell me.
I'm not left-handed either.
The man in black shoved Inigo away and changed hands. At last, the battle was fully joined. Inigo, to his amazement, was forced back down the steps. He tried one style, another, but it all came down to the same thing. The man in black was in control once more, and before Inigo knew it, his sword was knocked out of his hand. Inigo retreated, diving from the stairs to a moss-covered bar suspended over an archway. He swung out, landed, and scrambled to his sword. The man in black watched Inigo, then casually tossed his sword to where Inigo had landed moments before. Then the man in black copied Inigo's stunt, not only copied, but improved. He dove to the bar, swung completely over it like a circus performer, and dismounted with a backflip.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
Inigo moved like lightning, thrusting forward, slashing, then darting back in a single movement. The man in black dodged, blocked, and then slashed in return. On it went, back and forth across the rocky terrain, Inigo's feet moving with the grace and speed of a great improvisational dancer. At one point, Inigo's sword was knocked into the air, but he caught it on its way back down, and the fight continued with barely a pause. As things went on, Inigo became tense, and something terrible was written behind his eyes. He had given his all, done everything he could do, tried every style, made every maneuver, but it wasn't enough. And on his face was the realization that he, Inigo Montoya of Spain, son of Domingo Montoya of Spain, was going to lose. The man in black moved in, and with one swift motion, sent Inigo's sword flying from his grip. Inigo stood helpless for only a moment, and then dropped to his knees, bowed his head, and shut his eyes.
Kill me quickly.
I would as soon destroy a stained glass window as an artist like yourself. However, since I can't have you following me either,
The man in black slammed Inigo on the back of the head with his heavy sword guard, and Inigo slumped forward, unconscious but otherwise unharmed.
please understand. I hold you in the highest respect.
Minutes later, Vizzini, Fezzik, and Buttercup, who was being carried over the giant's shoulder, stared down from a narrow mountain path and saw the man in black in the distance, sprinting in their direction.
Inconceivable! Give her to me!
Fezzik delicately lowered Buttercup, and Vizzini harshly grabbed her hand.
Catch up with us quickly!
What do I do?
Finish him! Finish him! Your way!
Oh, good. My way. Thank you, Vizzini. Which way is my way?
Pick up one of those rocks, get behind the boulder, and in a few minutes the man in black will come running around the bend. The minute his head is in view, hit it with a rock!
Oh, my way is not very sportsmanlike.
When the man in black made his way to the bend in the trail, he began to move with caution, glancing around at the many large boulders on the path. After not hearing anything for a few moments, he started forward again, only to have a rock fly inches in front of his face and then shatter against the side of a nearby boulder. Fezzik stepped down from his hiding spot and picked up another rock with a friendly smile on his face.
I did that on purpose. I didn't have to miss.
I believe you. So, what happens now?
We face each other as God intended. Sportsmanlike. No tricks, no weapons. Skill against skill alone.
You mean you'll put down your rock, and I'll put down my sword, and we'll try to kill each other like civilized people?
I could kill you now.
Fezzik held up his rock, but the man in black shook his head, removed his sword and scabbard, and began approaching the giant.
Frankly, I think the odds are slightly in your favor at hand fighting.
It's not my fault being the biggest and strongest. I don't even exercise.
Fezzik lazily tossed the rock behind himself, and after a moment's pause, the man in black dove at Fezzik's chest, slamming into him. Fezzik barely blinked at the impact. The man backed up a few steps before ramming the giant again, skillfully applying a bear hug and making other futile attempts at wrestling moves. Fezzik just stood there, taking in the scenery. Finally, the man in black pushed himself away and stared up at the giant.
Look, are you just fiddling around with me, or what?
I just want to feel you're doing well. I hate for people to die embarrassed.
Fezzik lunged forward with stunning speed for anyone his size, but the man in black dropped to his knees and slid between the giant's legs.
You're quick.
And a good thing, too.
Why do you wear a mask? Were you burned by acid or something like that?
Fezzik punched at the man in black, who calmly responded while dodging.
Oh no, it's just that they're terribly comfortable. I think everyone will be wearing them in the future.
The man in black darted behind Fezzik and jumped off a boulder onto the giant's back, holding himself up by binding his arms around Fezzik's throat. Fezzik flailed a few times but was unable to throw the man off his back. The giant staggered purposefully backward into a boulder, slamming his rider against it with all of his considerable weight. And yet, the man in black held on, squeezing Fezzik's windpipe.
I just realized why you are giving me so much trouble.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I haven't fought just one person for so long. I've been specializing in groups, battling gangs for local charities, that kind of thing.
Again, Fezzik slammed his back against a boulder, though with less strength this time. The punishment for the man in black was terrible, and for a moment he seemed as if he was going to let go of Fezzik, but he held on.
Why should that make such a difference?
Well, you see, you use different moves when you're fighting half a dozen people than when you only have to be worried about one. Ugh.
Fezzik slammed the man in black against a boulder one last time, but his power had diminished. The giant fell to his knees, straining to breathe, but it was no use. The giant collapsed in a heap on the ground. The man in black quickly released Fezzik's neck, flipped him over, and put his ear to his opponent's heart. After confirming that it was still beating, he stood.
I don't envy you the headache you will have when you're awake. But in the meantime, rest well and dream of large women.
The man in black scooped up his sword and dashed off along the mountain path. Meanwhile, back at the top of the Cliffs of Insanity, Prince Humperdinck placed his foot into a footprint that was left over from the sword fight. Behind him was Count Rugen and a dozen armed knights on horseback. The prince had a talent for hunting, and while his prey was usually wild animals, he clearly had no issue tracking humans. He effortlessly traced through the footsteps of the fight, eventually finding his way to the spot where the man in black had knocked out Inigo.
There was a mighty duel, arranged all over. They were both masters.
Who won? How did it end?
The loser ran off alone. The winner followed these footprints towards Gilder.
Shall we track them both?
The loser is nothing. Only the princess matters. Clearly, this was all planned by warriors of Gilder. We must be ready for whatever lies ahead.
Could this be a trap?
I always think everything could be a trap, which is why I'm still alive.
Humperdinck climbed into his horse and galloped off. At the peak of the mountain, the man in black reached the summit to see Vizzini standing next to a blindfolded Buttercup, his knife at her throat. This part wasn't surprising, but what was somewhat unexpected was the fact that Vizzini had set up a picnic spread on a boulder with a flat top. There was a tablecloth, 2 goblets, a small leather wine container, some cheese, and a couple of apples. It was a truly lovely setup and a truly lovely spot, high on the edge of a mountain path with a view all the way back to the sea. If it weren't a hostage situation, it would have been rather romantic.
So, it is down to you, and it is down to me.
The man in black nodded and began approaching the kidnapper.
If you wish her dead, by all means, keep moving forward.
Let me explain.
There's nothing to explain. You're trying to kidnap what I've rightfully stolen.
The man continued his cautious approach.
Perhaps an arrangement can be reached.
There will be no arrangement, and you're killing her.
Buttercup let out a gasp as she felt the blade of Vizzini's knife press against his skin. The man in black stopped moving.
But if there can be no arrangement, then we are at an impasse.
I'm afraid so. I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brains.
You're that smart.
Let me put it this way. Have you ever heard of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates?
Yes.
Morons.
Really? In that case, I challenge you to a battle of wits.
For the princess?
The man in black nodded.
To the death.
He nodded again.
I accept.
Good. Then pour the wine.
As Vizzini filled the goblets with dark red liquid, the man in black pulled out a small packet and handed it to Vizzini.
Inhale this, but do not touch.
I smell nothing.
What you do not smell is called iocane powder. It is odorless, tasteless, dissolves instantly in liquid, and is among the more deadlier poisons known to man.
Vizzini watched with curiosity as the man in black took the two goblets and turned his back. A moment later, he turned to Vizzini again and put one goblet in front of Vizzini and one in front of himself and an empty iocane packet between them.
All right. Where's the poison? The battle of wits has begun. It ends when you decide and we both drink, and find out who is right and who is dead.
But it's so simple. All I have to do is divine from what I know of you. Are you the sort of man who would put the poison into his own goblet or his enemies? Now, a clever man would put the poison into his own goblet because he would know that only a great fool would reach for what he was given. I'm not a great fool, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. But you must have known I was not a great fool. You would have counted on it. So I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
You've made your decision then?
Not remotely, because iocane comes from Australia, as everyone knows, and Australia is entirely peopled with criminals, and criminals are used to having people not trust them, as you are not trusted by me, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Wait till I get going! Where was I?
Australia.
Yes, Australia. And you must have suspected I would have not known the powder's origin, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
You're just stalling now.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? You've beaten my giant, which means you're exceptionally strong. So you could have put the poison in your own goblet, trusting on your strength to save you. So I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. But you've also bested my Spaniard, which means you must have studied. And in studying, you must have learned that the man is mortal, so you would have put the poison as far from yourself as possible. So I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
You're trying to trick me into giving away something. It won't work.
It has worked! You've given everything away! I know where the poison is.
Then make your choice.
I will! And I choose... What in the world can that be?
Vizzini pointed behind the man in black, who quickly turned around. While his back was turned, Vizzini switched the places of the two goblets.
What? Where? I don't see anything.
The man in black turned to face Vizzini again.
Huh. Sorry. Oh, well, I could have sworn I saw something. No matter.
What's so funny?
I'll tell you in a minute. First, let's drink. Me from my glass, and you from yours.
The two men raised their goblets, silently cheering to their health, or soon-to-be lack thereof, and drank their wine.
You guessed wrong.
You only think I guessed wrong. And that's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned. You fool. You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this: never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line.
Vizzini's laugh abruptly stopped as he fell over dead. The man in black stepped past the corpse and took the blindfold and bindings off Buttercup before helping her to her feet.
And who are you?
I am no one to be trifled with, and that is all you ever need to know.
To think, all that time it was your cup that was...
They were both poisoned. I spent the last few years building up an immunity to iocane powder.
And with that, he took off, dragging the princess behind him. Farther back on the mountain path, Prince Humperdinck knelt down, inspecting the ground.
Someone has beaten a giant. There'll be great suffering in Gilder if she dies.
Humperdinck leapt onto his horse and charged off with his entourage. Farther along the mountain range, the man in black ran, still dragging Buttercup along. Finally, when she was close to exhaustion, he slowed down and released her hand.
Catch your breath.
If you'll release me, whatever you ask for ransom, you'll get it. Promise.
And what is that worth? The promise of a woman. You're very funny, Highness.
I was giving you a chance. No matter where you take me, there's no greater hunter than Prince Humperdinck. He could track a falcon on a cloudy day. He can find you.
You think your dearest love will save you?
I never said he was my dearest love. And yes, he will save me. That I know.
You admit to me you do not love your fiancé.
He knows I don't.
Are not capable of love is what you mean.
I have loved more deeply than a killer like yourself could ever dream.
The man in black raised his hand, looking like he'd strike Buttercup, who flinched but did not retreat.
That was a warning, Highness. The next time, my hand flies on its own. From where I come from, there are penalties when a woman lies.
He grabbed her wrist and began running again. At the mountain top, Humperdinck knelt by Vizzini's body, smelling the empty poison packet.
Locaine. I'd bet my life on it. And there are the princess's footprints. She is alive, or was, an hour ago. If she is otherwise, when I find her, I shall be very put out.
Once again, the prince mounted his horse and charged off. Elsewhere, the man in black stopped with Buttercup, this time resting near the edge of a ravine. The drop was sharp and severe. The ravine floor below was flat, but getting there would not be half the fun.
Rest, Highness.
I know who you are. Your cruelty reveals everything. I know how to lie. I know who you are. Your cruelty reveals everything. You're the dread pirate Roberts. Admit it.
With pride. What can I do for you?
You can die slowly, cut into 1,000 pieces.
Hardly complimentary, Your Highness. Why loose your venom on me?
You killed my love.
It's possible. I kill a lot of people. Who is this love of yours? Another prince like this one? Ugly, rich, and scabby?
No. Farm boy. Poor. Poor and perfect. Eyes like the sea after a storm. On the high seas, your ship attacked, and the dread pirate Roberts never takes prisoner.
I can't afford to make exceptions. Once word leaks out that a pirate has gone soft, people begin to disobey you. And then it's nothing but work, work, work all the time.
You mock my pain?
Life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something. I remember this farm boy of yours, I think. This would be what? 5 years ago? Does it bother you to hear?
Nothing you say will upset me.
He died well. That should please you. No bribe attempts or blubbering. He simply said, please. Please, I need to live. It was the please that caught my memory. I asked him what was so important for him. True love, he replied. And then he spoke of a girl of surpassing beauty and faithfulness. I can only assume he meant you. You should bless me for destroying him before he found out what you really are. Faithfulness he talked of, madam, your enduring faithfulness. Now, tell me truly, when you found out he was gone, did you get engaged to your prince that same hour, or did you wait a whole week out of respect for the dead?
Mock once, never again. I died.
The man in black was about to reply when he heard the sound of hoofbeats. He turned to see Humperdinck's cavalry galloping toward them.
You can die too, for all I...
Buttercup pushed the man in black with all his strength, and down he went. Down, down, rolling, spinning, tumbling down toward the floor of the ravine. As Buttercup stood, finally free of a captor, the man in black's voice drifted up to her.
As you wish!
Oh, my sweet Leslie, what have I done?
and without a second thought or consideration of the dangers, she leapt into the ravine. Now Buttercup was trembling, spinning, twisting, crashing, cartwheeling down toward what was left of her beloved. As the couple rolled toward the floor of the chasm, the man in black's eye mask flew off, revealing that he was indeed Wesley. The two finally made it to the bottom of the ravine and remained there, unmoving. Higher up the mountain, Humperdinck surveyed the area, having just missed the dramatic stunt.
Disappeared. He must have seen us closing in, which might account for his panicking and error, unless I'm wrong. And I'm never wrong. They are headed dead into the fire swamp.
The mere mention of the fire swamp made Count Rugen go pale, but he and the other knights rode on with the prince. On the ravine floor, Buttercup and Wesley laid a few feet apart, slowly regaining consciousness. Wesley crawled to his beloved.
Can you move at all?
Move. You're alive. If you want, I can fly.
For the first time in years, the two embraced each other, reveling in their reunion.
I told you I would always come for you. Why didn't you wait for me?
Well, you were dead.
Death cannot stop true love. All it can do is delay it for a while.
I will never doubt again.
There will never be a need.
They began to kiss. It was a tender kiss, tender and loving and gentle and...
No, please.
What is it? What's the matter?
They're kissing again. Do we have to hear the kissing part?
Someday you may not mind so much.
Skip on to the fire swamp. That sounded good.
Well, okay, you're sick. I'll humor you. So now where are we here? Yeah. Okay. Wesley and Buttercup raced along the ravine floor. Wesley glanced up, spotting Humperdinck and his men at the top of the cliff, looking down at him.
Ha! Your pig fiancé is too late. A few more steps and we'll be safe in the fire swamp.
We'll never survive.
Nonsense. You're only saying that because no one ever has.
They raced off, leaving Humperdinck and his men behind. The fire swamp, frankly, really didn't look worse than any other moist, sulfurous, infernal horror you might run across in your daily life. Great trees blocked the sun, vines hung everywhere, but mostly it looked like an average bog. Buttercup was clearly panicked, and maybe Wesley was too, but he moved calmly along.
It's not that bad. I'm not saying I'd like to build a summer home here, but the trees are actually quite lovely.
Several monstrous sounds echoed through the air, but they continued on, undeterred. As they cautiously moved through the trees, a slight popping sound was heard, and a moment later, a spurt of flames leapt up from the ground, setting the edge of Buttercup's dress on fire. Wesley quickly had Buttercup sit and gathered her remaining hem in his hands, doing his best to suffocate the fire. This wasn't all that easy and caused him a bit of grief, but he did his best to sound as jaunty as before.
Well now, that was an adventure. Singed a bit, were you?
No, you?
He was, but he shook his head no anyway. As he pulled her to his feet, there was another popping sound. Wesley grabbed Buttercup and pulled her aside just before another burst of flame shot up where she had been standing a moment before.
Well, one thing I will say, the fire swamp certainly does keep you on your toes.
As they continued through the fire swamp, they evaded even more jets of fire, slashed their way through hideous vines, and crossed a lake of dark water, all while talking with surprisingly calm tones. It seemed that being together was enough for them to overlook the treacherous natural death trap they were navigating.
This will all soon be but a happy memory because Robert's ship Revenge is anchored at the far end. And I, as you know, am Roberts.
But how is that possible, since he's been marauding 20 years and you only left me 5 years ago?
I myself am often surprised at life's little quirks. You see, What I told you before about saying please was true. It intrigued Roberts, as did my descriptions of your beauty. Finally, Roberts decided something. He said, "All right, Wesley. I've never had a valet. You can try it for tonight. I'll most likely kill you in the morning." 3 years he said that. Good night, Wesley. Good work. Sleep well. I'll most likely kill you in the morning. It was a fine time for me. I was learning to fence, to fight, anything anyone would teach me. And Roberts and I eventually became friends. And then it happened.
What? Go on.
Well, Roberts had grown so rich he wanted to retire, so he took me to his cabin and told me his secret. "I am not the Dread Pirate Roberts," he said. "My name is Ryan. I inherited this ship from the previous Dread Pirate Roberts, just as you will inherit it from me. The man I inherited from was not the real Dread Pirate Roberts either. His name was Cumberbund. The real Roberts has been retired 15 years and is living like a king in Patagonia." Then he explained the name was the important thing for inspiring the necessary fear. You see, no one would surrender to the dread pirate Wesley. So we sailed ashore, took on an entirely new crew, and he stayed aboard for a while as first mate. All the time calling me Roberts. Once the crew believed, he left the ship, and I have been Roberts ever since. Except, now that we're together, I shall retire and hand the name over to someone else. Is everything clear to you?
Buttercup was stunned by the tale, but nodded. As she took her next step, the ground under her gave way. She yelled out as she descended into the ground, vanishing in under a second. It was lightning sand, and it had her. That's like quicksand, but faster. Thinking quickly, Wesley slashed at a massive vine hanging from the tree above him and grabbed the end that was still attached to the branches before diving headfirst into the lightning sand. For a moment, everything was quiet, but the silence was soon disturbed by the sound of footsteps and snarling. A massive rat shambled up to the lightning sand pit, 80 pounds of bone and power. It sniffed around a bit, then lumbered away. Just after the swamp inhabitant moved behind a tree, Wesley's hand burst forth from the lightning sand and grabbed a vine. With all his strength, he pulled, dragging himself out of the pit with Buttercup on his back. The two were covered in sand, panting and coughing, but they were alive. As they embraced, comforting each other, when Wesley heard a soft growling, he looked up to see two more of the large rats looking down at him from nearby trees. Buttercup was facing the other way and didn't notice the sound as she continued to catch her breath. To avoid alarming her, Wesley quickly but calmly helped her to her feet and began walking again.
We'll never succeed. We may as well die here.
No, we have already succeeded. I mean, what are the 3 terrors of the fire swamp? 1. The flame spurts. No problem. There's a popping sound preceding each. We can avoid that. 2. The lightning sand. But you were clever enough to discover what that looks like, so in the future we can avoid that too.
Wesley, what about the ROUSs?
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
As if personally insulted by that remark, an ROUS came out of hiding and pounced on Wesley. It was well over 100 pounds and pinned him to the ground. Wesley struggled against the beast, but it bit him in the arm. Wesley drove his fist into the rodent's face, sending it rolling off of him. He took the opportunity to reach for his sword, but the ROUS recovered quickly and got on top of him again. The creature opened its mouth to bite again, but Wesley grabbed the top and bottom of its jaw, holding on, its disgusting tongue lashing in his face. With all of his might, he threw the rat off of himself and scrambled for the sword. But the ROUS changed its target, heading right for Buttercup.
Wesley!
Wesley abandoned the sword and reached for the rodent, grabbing it by the tail. As he wrestled with it, Buttercup grabbed a branch and began hitting it, but it barely slowed the beast's approach. It bit her and snagged the hem of her dress with its sharp teeth. It pulled, making Buttercup fall, but Wesley jumped onto its back and rolled it away from his beloved. The ROUS was all over him now, sinking its teeth into his shoulder. As its strength began to wane, Wesley heard a soft popping sound. He desperately rolled a few feet to the side, just in time to position the ROUS next to a flame spurt as it shot upward, setting his enemy ablaze. It let out a horrible sound as it burned. Wesley grabbed his sword and turned toward the rat, which slowly crawled toward him, clearly defeated, but too savage to know when to retreat. Wesley plunged his sword into the ROUS 3 times for good measure, and at long last the rat collapsed. The danger had finally passed. Tattered and beaten, but alive, Buttercup and Wesley walked out of the fire swamp.
We did it.
Now, was that so terrible?
They began leaning toward each other, but were interrupted by the sound of horses neighing, along with swift hoofbeats. Prince Humperdinck, Count Rugen, and the knights had found them.
Surrender!
You mean you wish to surrender to me? Very well. I accept.
I give you full marks for bravery. Don't make yourself a fool.
But how will you capture us? We know the secrets of the fire swamp. We can live there quite happily for some time. So, whenever you feel like dying, feel free to visit.
Tell you once again. Surrender.
As Humperdinck renewed his threat, the 2 knights stepped out from behind trees with loaded crossbows aimed at Wesley.
It will not happen.
For the last time, surrender.
Death first!
Will you promise not to hurt him?
What was that?
What was that?
If we surrender, and I return with you, will you promise not to hurt this man?
May I live 1,000 years and never hunt again.
He is a sailor on the pirate ship Revenge. Promise to return him to his ship.
I swear it will be done.
As Humperdinck's knights moved in to separate Buttercup from Wesley, the prince whispered to Count Rugen.
Once we're out of sight, take him back to Florin and throw him in the pit of despair.
I swear it will be done.
Wesley and Buttercup didn't hear the remark, as they were too busy staring at each other, heartbroken to be torn apart again so soon after their reunion.
I thought you were dead once, and it almost destroyed me. I could not bear it if you died again, not when I could save you.
Before anything else could be said, Buttercup was scooped off her feet by Humperdinck, who rode off with her, leaving Wesley with Rugen and his knights.
Come, sir, we must get you to your ship.
We are men of action. Lies do not become us.
Well spoken, sir.
As the knights apprehended Wesley, something about Rugen caught his eye.
What is it?
You have 6 fingers on your right hand. Someone was looking for you.
It wasn't clear if Rugen took offense at Wesley's frankly insensitive remark, or just wanted a quiet ride back to Florin. But he wordlessly clubbed Wesley over the head with the pommel of his sword, knocking him out. All right, kid, I need a bit of a break. I'll run to the kitchen, grab you something to drink, and we'll continue in, let's say 10 minutes, and that goes for all of you on twitch.tv as well. We'll be right back. All right. Let's continue, kid. Here's the drink. Let's see, where were we? Here we go. The next thing Wesley knew. Oh. All right. The next thing Wesley knew, he was waking up in a strange room. The room was dark and chilly, underground and windowless, lit by flickering torches. Wesley was chained down on what seemed to be a makeshift medical table, and a man with pale skin and white hair was wiping down his wounds.
Where am I?
The pit of despair. Don't even think. Oh, okay. Oh, jeez. Don't even think about trying to escape. The chains are far too thick. And don't dream of being rescued either. The only way in is secret, and only the prince, the count, and I know how to get in and out.
Then I'm here till I die.
Till they kill you. Yep.
Then why bother curing me?
The prince and the count always insist on everyone being healthy before they're broken.
So it's to be torture.
The man nodded excitedly.
I can cope with torture.
The man shook his head warningly.
You don't believe me?
You survived the fire swamp. You must be very brave. But nobody withstands the machine.
Back in Florin Castle, Buttercup, now wearing a beautiful dress, gloomily walked the halls, passing Prince Humperdinck and Count Rugen without even looking at them.
She's been like that ever since the fire swamp. It's my father's failing health that's upsetting her.
Of course.
The king died that very night, and before the following dawn, Buttercup and Humperdinck were married. And at noon she met her subjects again, this time as their queen. And in the courtyard was twice as packed as the last time the prince addressed his subjects. Humperdinck, Rugen, and the queen stood on the balcony as they did the last time, but now Humperdinck wore the crown of the king.
My father's final words were,
Hold it, Grandpa. You read that wrong. She doesn't marry Humperdinck, she marries Wesley. I'm just sure of it. After all that Wesley did for her, if she didn't marry him, it wouldn't be fair.
Well, who says life is fair? Where's that written? Not in this book. Life isn't always fair.
Well, I'm telling you, you're messing up the story. Now get it right.
Do you want me to go on with this?
Yes.
All right then, no more interruptions. At noon, she met her subjects again, this time as her queen.
my father's final words were, love her as I loved her, and there will be joy. I present to you your queen, Queen Buttercup.
As she did the day she was announced as princess, Buttercup emerged from the castle. But her dress was even more resplendent, and instead of the crown of the princess, she wore the queen's. And once again, the crowd went to its knees. All of them silent. Well, almost all of them.
Boo! Boo! Boo!
An ancient woman stood near the front of the crowd. She wore loose rags, her hair was messy, and she had a wart on her face. And she scowled at Buttercup with absolute disgust.
And why do you do this?
Because you had love in your hands and you gave it up.
But they would have killed Wesley if I hadn't done it.
Your true love lives and you marry another. True love saved her in the fire swamp and she treated it like garbage. And that's what she is, the queen of refuse. So bow down to her if you want. Bow to her. Bow to the queen of slime, the queen of filth, the queen of putrescence. Boo! Boo! Rubbish! Filth! Slime! Muck! Boo! Boo!
Buttercup woke from a nightmare with a gasp. It was 10 days until the wedding. The king still lived, but Buttercup's nightmares were growing steadily worse.
See? Didn't I tell you she'd never marry that rotten Humperdinck?
Yes, you're very smart. Shut up. Buttercup made her way across the castle to the prince's chambers. Humperdinck was looking over documents at his desk, and Count Rugen was standing nearby.
It comes to this. I love Wesley. I always have. I know now I always will. If you tell me I must marry you in 10 days, please believe I will be dead by morning.
I could never cause you grief. Consider our wedding off. Rugen, you return this Wesley to his ship?
Yes?
Then we will simply alert him. Beloved, are you certain he still wants you? After all, it was you who did the leaving in the fire swamp. Not to mention, the pirates are not known to be men of their words.
My Wesley will always come for me.
I suggest a deal. You write 4 copies of a letter. I'll send my 4 fastest ships, 1 in each direction. The dread pirate Roberts is always close to Flora in this time of year. We'll run up the white flag and deliver your message. If Wesley wants you, bless you both. If not, please consider me as an alternative to suicide. Are we agreed?
She nodded and set to writing her letters. The next day, Humperdinck and Rugen walked together through a grove of knotted trees.
Your princess is really a winning creature. A trifle simple, perhaps, but her appeal is undeniable.
Oh, I know. The people are quite taken with her. It's odd. But when I hired Vizzini to have her murdered on our engagement day, I thought that was clever. But it's going to be so much more moving when I strangle her on our wedding night. Once Gilder has been blamed, the nation will be truly outraged. They'll demand we go to war.
Rugen smiled at the prince approvingly, and then turned to a particularly large tree.
Now, where is that secret knot? It's impossible to find. Ah!
He pushed on one of the knots, and a moment later, part of the tree swung inward, revealing a staircase leading underground.
Are you coming down into the pit? Wesley's got his strength back. I'm starting him on the machine tonight.
Tyrone, you know how much I love watching you work. But I've got my country's 500th anniversary to plan, my wedding to arrange, my wife to murder, and Gilda to frame for it. I'm simply swamped.
Get some rest. If you haven't got your health, you haven't got anything.
Rugen smiled and headed down into the pit. Inside, Wesley, now with even more restraints on him than before, was wheeled up to what was obviously the machine. He stood more than the machine, stood more than 10 feet tall, with every type of mechanism imaginable. Levers and wheels and wires, you name it. It was there. Next to Rugen's stately desk, which was covered in books and notes, no, next to it. Sorry, kid. Rugen approached Wesley as his assistant attached suction cups to the prisoner's head and chest.
Beautiful, isn't it? It took me half a lifetime to invent it. I'm sure you've discovered my deep and abiding interest in pain. At present, I'm writing the definitive work on the subject. So I want you to be totally honest with me on how the machine makes you feel. This being our first try, I'll use the lowest setting.
Rugen grabbed a large lever attached to a great dial on the machine and set it from 0 to 1. A floodgate above the machine opened, pouring water down a chute, turning wheels, and activating the machine. Wesley stared up at Rugen fearfully as his body was racked with intense pain. A strange sound escaped his throat, but he kept himself from screaming, not wanting to give the Count the satisfaction. Rugen finally set the dial from 1 back down to 0 again, and a moment later, the machine deactivated. The Count then moved to his desk, where a pen and notebook were waiting for him.
As you know, the concept of the suction pump is centuries old. Well, really, that's all this is. Except that instead of sucking water, I'm sucking life. I've just sucked 1 year of your life away. I might one day go as high as 5, but I really don't know what that would do to you. So let's just start with what we have. What did this do to you? Tell me. And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest. How do you feel?
Wesley sobbed softly, unable to speak.
Interesting.
Back in the castle, the prince was in his quarters. While he had told many lies in his lifetime, his stated desire to watch Rugen's work in the pit of despair was not one of them. Humperdinck was indeed swamped with work. Piles of papers were strewn all over. As he worked, a pale, shifty man appeared in his doorway.
Yellen,
Sire,
as chief enforcer for all of Florin, I trust you with this secret. Killers from Gilder are infiltrating the thieves' forest and plan to murder my bride on our wedding night.
my spy network has heard no such news.
Before the prince could respond, Buttercup walked in.
Has there been any word from Wesley?
Too soon, my angel. Patience.
He will come for me.
Of course.
Buttercup left as quickly as she had come, and the two men immediately resumed their conspiratorial conversation.
She will not be murdered. On the day of the wedding, I want the thieves' forest emptied and every inhabitant arrested.
Many of the thieves will resist. My regular enforcers will be inadequate.
Form a brute squad then. I want the thieves' forest emptied before I wed.
It won't be easy, sire.
Try ruling the world sometime.
The day of the wedding arrived. The brute squad had their hands full, carrying out Humperdinck's orders. As Yellen watched his men apprehending every civilian in sight, he consulted with his assistant.
Is everybody out?
Almost. There's a Spaniard giving us some trouble.
Well, you give him some trouble. Move!
The assistant did what he was told and went off to give some trouble to the Spaniard. Of course, the Spaniard was Inigo, drunk as a skunk, sprawled out in front of a hovel with a bottle of brandy in one hand and his sword in the other. He looked dreadful, unshaven, puffy-eyed, gaunt. But the way he brandished his sword would give anyone cause for worry.
I am waiting for you, Vizzini. You told me to go back to the beginning, so I have. This is where I am, and this is where I'll stay. I will not be moved.
He took a long drink from his brandy, stopping as Yellen's assistant approached him.
Oh, there.
I do not budge. Keep your hold there.
But the prince gave orders.
Inigo leapt up and drunkenly slashed at the assistant, but he only made it 2 steps before he stumbled and had to hold himself up against the side of the hovel.
Hold it, Vizzini. When the job went wrong, you go back to the beginning. And this is where we got the job. So is the beginning. And I'm staying till Vizzini comes.
You, brute, come here.
I am waiting for Vizzini.
You surely are a meanie.
2 massive hands pulled Inigo to his feet. He took a moment to compare the hands of his shirt to his own before looking up and smiling.
Hello.
It's you.
True.
It was Fezzik. As Yellen's assistant was about to club Inigo, Fezzik sent the man flying with a single punch.
Ugh, you don't look so good. You don't smell so good either.
Perhaps not. I feel fine.
Yeah?
Fezzik let go of Inigo, who immediately fell face first onto the ground. The giant took his friend to an alehouse and bought some stew. Fezzik and Inigo were reunited. As Fezzik nursed his inebriated friend back to health, he told Inigo of Vizzini's death and the existence of Count Rugen, the six-fingered man. Considering Inigo's lifelong search, he handled the news surprisingly well, which is to say that he fainted again upon hearing it. Fezzik took great care in reviving Inigo, which is to say that he dunked Inigo's head into a bucket of hot water, then into a bucket of icy water, then the hot water, then the icy water, then the hot water,
That's
then the
enough.
icy.
That's enough. Where is this Rugen so I may kill him?
He's with the prince in the castle, but the castle is guarded by 30 men.
How many could you handle?
I don't think more than 10.
Yeah, leaves 20 for me. At my best, I could never defeat that many. I need Vizzini to plan. I have no gift for strategy.
But Vizzini's dead.
No, not Vizzini. I need the man in black.
What?
Look, he bested you with your strength, your greatness. He bested me with steel. He must have outthought Vizzini, and a man who can do that can plan my castle's onslaught any day. Let's go.
Where?
Man in black, obviously.
But you don't know where he is.
Don't bother me with trifles. After 20 years at last, my father's soul will be at peace. There will be blood tonight!
At the castle, the prince was sharpening a knife in his chamber when Yellen entered and kneeled to him.
Rise and report.
The thieves' forest is emptied. 30 men guard the castle gate.
Double it. My princess must be safe.
The gate has but one key, and I carry that.
He showed the prince the key, which was dangling from a chain around his neck. Just at that moment, Buttercup walked in.
Ah, my dulcet darling. Tonight we marry. Tomorrow morning, your men will escort us to Flooring Channel, where every ship in my armada waits to accompany us on our honeymoon.
Every ship but your fastest, you mean?
The prince's wide grin waned slightly.
Every ship but the 4 you sent.
Yes, of course. Naturally, not those 4.
Yellen was a smart man and sensed that it would be best if he weren't around for that moment.
Your Majesties.
As the chief enforcer quickly took his leave, Buttercup stared coldly at Humperdinck.
You never sent the ships. Don't bother lying. Doesn't matter. Wesley will come for me anyway.
You're a silly girl.
Yes, I am a silly girl. For not having seen sooner that you were nothing but a coward with a heart full of fear.
I would not say such things if I were you.
Why not? You can't hurt me. Wesley and I are joined by the bonds of love, and you cannot track that. Not with 1,000 bloodhounds. And you cannot break it. Not with 1,000 swords. And when I say you are a coward, that is only because you are the slimiest weakling ever to crawl the earth.
Humperdinck had prided himself on always maintaining his royal disposition, but Buttercup had gone too far this time. He grabbed her by the hair and dragged her out of his chambers.
I would not say such things if I were you.
The prince locked Buttercup in a room and ran to the pit of despair as fast as he could. When he barged into the secret lair, Count Rugen was writing notes from his most recent experiment while Wesley lay nearby, still hooked up to the machine, though it was inactive at the time. The prince walked up to the machine and looked down at Wesley with burning hatred.
You truly love each other, and so you might have been truly happy. Not one couple in a century has that chance, no matter what the storybooks say. And so I think no man in a century will suffer as greatly as you will.
And with that he whirled, turning to the machine, grabbing the lever, and...
Not to 50.
But it was too late. Prince Humperdinck threw the lever as high as it would go. The machine roared to life, and there had never been such pain. The pain grew and grew. Wesley screamed out in pure agony, his body lifting up off the table, pushing against his restraints as anguish filled every fiber of his being. The sound he made was one that humans were not meant to make. His shrieks rose out of the pit of despair and echoed through the entire kingdom. Yellen and his 60 brutes looked around for a threat that wasn't there. In her room, Buttercup's head turned, searching for the source of a sound she can't even recognize. People in town stopped as the sound hit them. Children went pale, bolting toward their parents. Inigo and Fezzik were trying to make their way through a jammed marketplace when the sound hit them.
Fezzik, listen. Do you hear? That is the sound of ultimate suffering. My heart made that sound when Rugen slaughtered my father. The man in black makes it now.
The man in black?
true love is marrying another tonight. So who else has cause for ultimate suffering?
Inigo began forcing his way through the crowd.
Excuse me. Pardon me. It's important.
But he quickly lost his patience.
Fezzik, please.
Everybody move!
The crowd immediately parted.
Here.
Inigo and Fezzik followed the sound of ultimate suffering to the grove of trees, where they found the pale medic pushing a wheelbarrow. Inigo drew his sword and pointed it at the man's throat.
Where is the man in black? You get there from this grove, yes?
The man looked terrified, but said nothing.
Fezzik, jog his memory.
Fezzik thumped his fist on the man's head, and the man fell to the ground.
I'm sorry, Inigo. I didn't mean to jog him so hard.
Inigo stepped into a small clearing and kneeled, his sword in his hands and his eyes closed.
I have failed you for 20 years. Now our misery can end. Somewhere close by is a man who can help us. I cannot find him alone. I need you. I need you to guide my sword. Please.
He stood, but his eyes were still closed, his feet moving beneath him.
Guide my sword.
Inigo walked blindly through the grove, his sword held in front of him. He turned and moved a few more steps until the point of his sword struck a tree. For a moment, he stood frozen. Opening his eyes, it seemed that his prayers had been for naught. Defeated, he collapsed against the tree, resting his arm on a knot. As he did, he heard a click, and part of the secret staircase was revealed. Inigo and Fezzik looked at each other in amazement before heading down the stairs. Inside the pit of despair, they found Wesley lying on a table next to the machine, unmoving. Fezzik leaned over him, listening for a heartbeat.
He's dead.
It just is not fair.
Oh, Grandpa, wait. What did Fezzik mean he's dead? I mean, he didn't mean dead. Wesley's only faking, right?
You want me to read this or not?
Who gets Humperdinck?
I don't understand.
Who kills Prince Humperdinck? At the end, somebody's got to do it. Is it Inigo? Who?
Nobody kills him. He lives.
You mean he wins? Jesus, Grandpa, what did you read me this thing for?
You know, you've been very sick and you're taking the story very seriously. I think we better stop now.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. Sit down. All right.
Okay, all right now. Let's see, where were we? Oh, yes, the pit of despair.
Well, we Montoyas have never taken defeat easily. Come along, Fezzik. Bring the body.
The body?
Have you any money?
I have a little.
Just hope it's enough to buy a miracle, that's all.
Fezzik took Wesley's corpse, and Inigo led them to a small hovel in the forest. This is a different hovel from the one he was drunk in front of earlier. Inigo knocked on the door urgently.
Go away.
Inigo continued furiously pounding on the door until a small window in the door opened, revealing an old man.
What?
Are you the miracle Max who worked for the king all those years?
The king's stinking son fired me. And thank you so much for bringing up such a painful subject. While you're at it, why don't you give me a nice paper cut and pour lemon juice on it? We're closed.
He slammed the window shut, and Inigo immediately continued knocking.
Beat it, or I'll call the brute squad.
I'm on the brute squad.
You are the brute squad.
We need a miracle. It's very important.
Look, I'm retired, and besides, why would you want someone the king's stinking son fired? I might kill whoever you wanted me to miracle.
He's already dead.
He is, eh? I'll take a look. Bring him in.
Inigo and Fezzik hurried inside and laid Wesley down across a bench. Max picked up one of Wesley's arms and let it go. It dropped down to the bench with a thump.
I've seen worse.
Max began poking at Wesley, mumbling to himself as he inspected his patient.
Let me see.
Sir,
Um,
sir,
Ah,
we're really in a terrible rush.
don't rush me, Sonny. You rush a miracle man, you get rotten miracles. You got money?
65.
Sheesh. I never worked for so little, except once, and that was a very noble cause.
This is noble, sir. His wife is crippled. His children are on the brink of starvation.
Aren't you a rotten liar?
I need him to help me avenge my father, murdered these 20 years.
Your first story was better. Where's that Bellows? He probably owes you money, huh? Well, I'll ask him.
After a moment of searching, Max picks up a large set of bellows.
He's dead. He can't talk.
Ah, look who knows so much. Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. Please open his mouth.
Inigo did, and Max put the bellows in Wesley's mouth, beginning to pump him full of air.
Now, mostly dead is slightly alive. Now, all dead, well, with all dead, there's usually only one thing you can do.
What's that?
Go through his clothes and look for loose change.
Max took the bellows out of Wesley's mouth and leaned in next to his head.
Hey! Hello in there. Hey! What's so important? What you got here that's worth living for?
He pressed lightly on Wesley's chest, forcing the air out of him.
True love.
True love. You heard him. You could not ask for a more noble cause than that.
Sonny, true love is the greatest thing in the world. Except for a nice MLT, mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, where the mutton is nice and lean and the tomato is ripe. They're so perky, I love that. But that's not what he said. He distinctly said to blave. And as we all know, to blave means to bluff. So you're probably playing cards, and he cheated.
Liar! Liar! Liar!
An ancient fury of a woman appeared out of a nearby room and stormed towards Max, pointing at him accusingly.
Get back, witch!
I'm not a witch, I'm your wife. But after what you just said, I'm not even sure I want to be that anymore.
You never had it so good.
True love! He said true love, Max. My God.
Don't say another word, Valerie.
He's afraid. Ever since Prince Humperdinck fired him, his confidence is shattered.
Why'd you say that name? You promised me you would never say that name.
What? Humperdinck?
Ah!
Humperdinck! Humperdinck! Humperdinck!
Schwicken!
Humperdinck! Humperdinck, 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 Humperdinck!
Ah, not listening.
A life expiring, and you don't have the decency to say why you won't help.
Nobody's hearing nothing.
Humperdinck, Humperdinck, Humperdinck,
This is Buttercup's true love. If you heal him, he will stop Humperdinck's wedding.
Humperdinck, Humperdinck.
Shut up, shut up. Wait. I make him better. Humperdinck suffers?
Humiliations galore.
Ha ha! That is a noble cause. Give me the 65. I'm on the job.
Max quickly got to work, mixing ingredients which he fashioned into a lump, and Valerie delicately painted it with melted chocolate.
That's a miracle pill?
The chocolate coating makes it go down easier. But you have to wait 15 minutes for full potency, and you shouldn't go swimming after for at least, what?
An hour.
Yeah, an hour.
A good hour, yeah.
Inigo accepted the pill, and they headed out the door with their mostly dead companion.
Thank you for everything.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It would take a miracle. Bye-bye!
Bye!
Inigo and Fezzik made their way to the castle and scaled the outer wall, where they surveyed the area. There were 60 brutes standing in formation in front of the castle gate.
Inigo, there's more than 30.
What's the difference? We've got him. Help me here. We'll have to force feed him.
They popped Wesley's body up against the wall.
Has it been 15 minutes?
We can't wait. Wedding's in half an hour, and we must strike in the hustle and the bustle beforehand. Tilt his head back. Open its mouth.
Inigo kissed the pill for good luck before forcing it into Wesley's mouth.
So, how long do we have to wait before we know if the miracle works?
Your guess is as good as mine.
As Inigo spoke, Wesley's eyes snapped open.
I'll beat you at your pot. I'll take you both together.
Oh, guess not very long.
Why won't my arms move?
You've been mostly dead all day.
You had Miracle Max make a pill to bring you back.
Who are you? Are we enemies? Why am I on this wall? Where's Buttercup?
Let me explain. No, wait, there is not too much. Let me sum up. Buttercup is marrying Humperdinck in a little less than half an hour, so all we have to do is get in, break up the wedding, steal the princess, make our escape. After I kill Count Rugen.
That doesn't leave much time for dilly-dallying.
Wesley tapped his thumb impatiently.
You just wiggle your finger. That's wonderful.
I've always been a quick healer. What are our liabilities?
There is but one working castle gate, and it is guarded by 60 men.
And our assets?
Your brains, physical strength, and my steel.
That's it? Impossible. If I had a month to plan, maybe I could come up with something, but this?
Wesley shook his head, flopping it from side to side.
You just shook your head. Doesn't that make you happy?
My brains, his steel, and your strength against 60 men. And you think a little head jiggle is supposed to make me happy? I mean, if we only had a wheelbarrow, that would be something.
Where did we put the wheelbarrow that man had?
Over the man, I think.
Well, why didn't you list that among our assets in the first place? What I wouldn't give for a Holocaust cloak.
There we cannot help you.
Fezzik pulled a massive black cloak out of his tunic.
Will this do?
How did you get that?
At Miracle Max's. It fits so nice, he said I could keep it.
All right. Come on. Help me up. Now, I'll need a sword eventually.
Why, you can't even lift one.
True, but that's hardly common knowledge, is it?
Wesley's head tilted back limply. Fezzik moved it upright for him.
Thank you. Now, there may be problems once we're inside.
I'll say. How do I find the Count? Once I do, how do I find you again? Once I find you again, how do we escape?
Don't pester him. He's had a hard day.
Right, sorry.
Fezzik nodded Wesley's head for him in acknowledgement, and they began to move across the wall.
Inigo,
What?
I hope we win.
Inside the castle, Buttercup was in a bridal gown, and she looked incredible. It wasn't just her beauty, there was a tranquility about her now. The prince stood behind her, fastening a pearl necklace about her neck.
You don't seem excited, my little muffin.
Should I be?
Brides often are, I'm told.
I do not marry tonight. My Wesley will save me.
Outside, Wesley, Inigo, and Fezzik peered at their adversaries. Yellen stood by the gate, flanked by his brutes. Fezzik and Inigo placed their hands on top of each other. Wesley still wasn't able to do even that, but after a bit of rocking back and forth, he managed to get enough momentum to catapult his arm over his friends. Inside the castle, the wedding had begun, officiated by the most intelligent-looking, impressive-appearing clergyman imaginable.
There once was a man named Goldwager who was king of the pirates. He had fame, power, and wealth beyond your wildest dreams. Before they hung him from the gallows, These were the final words he said. Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today. Marriage, the blessed arrangement, that dream within a dream.
The clergyman was interrupted by the sound of yelling, barking at his troops.
Stand your ground, men. Stand your ground.
At the gate, the brutes looked fearfully at a massive figure in a black cloak that seemed to float toward them out of the darkness.
Stand your ground.
I am the dread pirate Roberts. There will be no survivors.
It was Fezzik, wearing the Holocaust cloak, being pushed in the wheelbarrow by Inigo. Wesley laid on Inigo's back, being dragged along.
No!
Not yet.
My men are here, and I am here, but soon you will not be here.
No!
Light him.
Inigo held a lit candle up to the cloak, and the cloak showed how it had earned his name. The fire spread across the fabric in an instant, but it didn't burn through it, leaving Fezzik warm but safe. The massive, flaming specter continued floating toward the gate.
The dread pirate Roberts takes no survivors. All your worst nightmares are about to come true.
In the chapel, the clergyman continued his sermon.
Then love, true love, will follow you forever.
Still hearing commotion, Prince Humperdinck turned quickly to Count Rugen and gave him a sharp nod. The Count wordlessly began walking out, bringing 4 heavily armed guards with him. Outside, Fezzik gave the performance of a lifetime as the brutes scattered before him.
The dread pirate Roberts is here for your souls.
Stay where you are. Stand and fight. I said, stay where you are.
But it was no good. The brutes all fled, leaving Yellen to face the flaming terror alone. In the chapel, the clergyman rambled on.
So treasure your love.
Oh, skip to the end.
Have you the ring?
As Humperdinck pulled the ring out of his pocket and prepared to put it on Buttercup, a rumbling was heard.
Here comes my Wesley now.
Outside, Fezzik pulled off the Holocaust cloak as Yellen stepped inside the gate and began closing it behind himself.
Fezzik, the portcullis.
Fezzik rushed forward, grabbing the portcullis, and heaved it upward as Yellen watched in disbelief. In the chapel, Humperdinck shoved the ring on Buttercup's finger.
Your Wesley is dead. I killed him myself.
Then why is there fear behind your eyes?
Yellen was backed against the main gate as Wesley, Inigo, and Fezzik closed in on him.
Give us the gate key.
I have no gate key.
Fezzik, tear his arms off.
Oh, you mean this gate key?
Yellen produced the key and handed it over. Inside, the clergyman was moving on to the vows.
And do you, Princess Buttercup,
Man and wife. Say man and wife.
man and wife.
Escort the bride to the honeymoon suite. I'll be there shortly.
Humperdinck quickly shoved Buttercup into the arms of the king and queen before dashing off.
He didn't come.
Count Rugen and his guards raced through the castle as Wesley, Inigo, and Fezzik cautiously made their way through the halls. Fezzik was still dragging Wesley, who was, in turn, dragging Yellen's sword behind him. Wesley still didn't have the strength to raise it, but it could still be there. Before long, the two groups crossed paths. Count Rugen smirked and lifted his sword as he addressed the guards.
Kill the Spaniard and the giant, but leave the third for questioning.
The guards charged at them, and Inigo went wild. The guards may have been good, maybe even more than good, but they never got a chance to show it, because Inigo was much, much better. His sword never moved faster, and the gods were dead in a matter of seconds. Then Inigo looked Count Rugen in the eye and said the words that he had been waiting to say for 20 long years.
Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Rugen took a fighting stance, but then turned and sprinted away. Without a moment's hesitation, Inigo chased after him, leaving Fezzik and Wesley behind. Rugen turned a corner and ran into a room with a heavy wooden door, shutting it behind himself. When Inigo reached it, it was locked. He rammed his shoulder against the door, but it would not budge.
Fezzik! I need you!
As Fezzik stood with Wesley, who was still unable to walk under his own power, Inigo continued to slam his body against the door in utter desperation.
I can't leave him alone.
He's getting away from me, Fezzik! Please!
I'll be right back.
Fezzik propped Wesley up against a decorative suit of armor, as delicate as he could, and then took off down the hall toward Inigo. He approached, held his friend back from ramming the door, and again, with one mighty punch, crushed the door.
Thank you.
As Inigo ran through the door and continued the chase, Buttercup was led through a hallway on the other side of the castle by the king and queen.
Strange wedding.
Yes, a very strange wedding. Come along.
Buttercup gently stopped the king and kissed him on the cheek.
Oh, what was that for?
Because you've always been so kind to me, and I won't be seeing you again, since I'm killing myself once we reach the honeymoon suite.
The king's hearing wasn't what it once was, so he didn't understand the severity of Buttercup's words.
Won't that be nice? She kissed me.
Elsewhere, Fezzik returned to the suit of armor that he had propped Wesley against, but Wesley was nowhere to be found. At the same time, Count Rugen was dashing through corridors, with Inigo quickly closing the gap between them. As he ran down a staircase into the castle's dining room, Rugen pulled out a dagger. Moments later, when Inigo came flying down the same staircase, Rugen threw the dagger, which sunk deep into Inigo's stomach. He stumbled back, bracing himself against a wall as his shirt became stained with blood.
Sorry, Father. I tried.
You must be that little Spanish brat I taught a lesson to all those years ago. Simply incredible. Have you been chasing me your whole life only to fail now? I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard. How marvelous.
Inigo sank to the floor, clutching the knife in his gut. In the honeymoon suite, Buttercup quickly shut the door behind her and moved to a table where a small wooden box was waiting. She opened it, revealing a long dagger. She delicately picked it up and looked at it calmly for a moment before holding the point of her dagger to her chest.
There's a shortage of perfect breasts in this world. 'Twould be a pity to damage yours.
Buttercup whirled around to see Wesley lying on the bridal suite's bed, Yellen's sword still in his hand. His voice sounded fine, but he remained still on the bed. Buttercup dropped the dagger and leapt onto the bed, covering him with kisses.
Oh, Wesley, darling. Wesley, why won't you hold me?
Gently.
At a time like this, that's all you can think to say? Gently?
She lifted his head on the pillow and pulled him into a kiss on the lips.
Gently!
She let go, and his head thumped against the headboard of the bed. Back in the dining room, Inigo yanked the dagger out of his stomach, shuddering with pain as he dropped the blade beside him and began to stand, using his sword as a crutch.
Good heavens, are you still trying to win?
Inigo held his hand against his wound and leaned back against the wall, barely able to keep himself on his feet.
You've got an overdeveloped sense of vengeance. It's going to get you into trouble someday.
Rugen moved in for the kill and thrust his sword at Inigo's heart. Inigo lazily parried the blade with his own, but Rugen still succeeded at stabbing him in the shoulder. Inigo didn't even react. The Count reset his stance and thrust again, but Inigo flicked his sword to the other side, resulting in matching shoulder wounds. But he didn't even blink. Rugen stepped back before slashing his sword downward. Inigo raised his arm and blocked the attack before batting Rugen's blade away, pushing himself off the wall, beginning to walk toward the Count.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Inigo leaned against the dining table, and Rugen took the opportunity to launch a flurry of attacks. The Count didn't seek out Domingo Montoya for a decorative blade 20 years ago, after all. He was indeed a master swordsman. But Inigo deftly blocked everything that came his way. Rugen cautiously backed up as Inigo began approaching him once more.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
And again Rugen attacked, slashing with wondrous skill. But none of his blows got through, as Inigo continued his advance, and every parry seemed to energize Inigo. His moves had gone from sluggish and weak to quick and powerful in a matter of seconds.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Stop saying that!
Rugen swung at Inigo and was blocked once again, but this time Inigo struck back, piercing his blade into the Count's right shoulder. The Count swung again, but Inigo ducked and thrust again, wounding the last healthy shoulder in the room. Then Inigo went on a rampage. His sword moved with incredible speed and power, channeling the righteous fury he had been carrying with him for 20 long years.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
No!
Inigo had backed Rugen against a wall and slashed his right cheek in the process.
Offer me money.
Yes.
Power to. Promise me that.
Inigo slashed Rugen's other cheek, giving the Count scars to match his own. Between the
All
two
that
of
I
them,
have
their
and
wounds
more,
were mirrored.
please.
Offer me everything I ask for.
Anything you want.
Rugen used his sword to swat away Inigo's, then raised his sword arm preparing to strike. But Inigo pulled his left hand away from his stomach and reached up, grabbing the Count's arm in midair as he plunged his sword into the man who had commissioned its creation.
I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
Inigo pushed the sword even deeper, running his enemy through before kicking him off the blade. The six-fingered man flew backward against the wall before falling onto the ground. Count Rugen was dead. Inigo took only a moment to catch his breath and let the moment sink in before running out of the dining room. Inside the honeymoon suite, Wesley was still on the bed with Buttercup hovering over him.
Oh, Wesley, will you ever forgive me?
What hideous sin have you committed lately?
I got married. I didn't want to. It all happened so fast.
It never happened.
What?
It never happened.
But it did. I was there. This old man said man and wife.
Did you say I do?
Oh, well, no, we sort of skipped that part.
Then you're not married. If you didn't say it, you didn't do it. Wouldn't you agree, Your Highness?
Buttercup turned to see that Humperdinck had entered the room and was staring at them as he drew his sword.
A technicality that will shortly be remedied. But first things first, to the death.
No. To the pain.
I don't think I'm quite familiar with that phrase.
I'll explain, and I'll use small words so that you'll be sure to understand, you warthog-faced baboon.
That may be the first time in my life a man has dared insult me.
It won't be the last. To the pain means the first thing you lose will be your feet, below the ankles, then your hands at your wrists, next to your nose.
And then my tongue, I suppose. I killed you too quickly the last time. A mistake I don't mean to duplicate tonight.
I wasn't finished. The next thing you lose will be your left eye, followed by your right.
And then my ears. I understand. Let's get on with it.
Wrong! Your ears you keep, and I'll tell you why. So that every shriek of every child at seeing your hideousness will be yours to cherish. Every babe that weeps at your approach, every woman who cries out, "Dear God, what is that thing?" will echo in your perfect ears. That is what to the pain means. It means I leave you in anguish, wallowing in freakish misery forever.
I think you're bluffing.
It's possible, Pig. I might be bluffing. It's conceivable, you miserable vomitous mass, that I'm only lying here because I lack the strength to stand. Then again, perhaps I have the strength after all.
Finally, Wesley began to move. His body turned, he put his feet on the floor, staring Humperdinck dead in the eyes as he stood and raised his sword at the prince.
Drop your sword.
The prince's blade clattered as it hit the ground.
Have a seat.
Humperdinck scurried to a nearby chair and sat with terror on his face as Wesley turned to Buttercup.
Tie him up. Make it as tight as you like.
And as she set to work, Inigo entered and looked around.
Where's Fezzik?
I thought he was with you.
No?
In that case,
Wesley's balance betrayed him, and he wobbled before catching himself on the bedpost.
Help him,
Why does Wesley need helping?
because he has no strength.
I knew it. I knew you were bluffing. I knew he was bluffing.
Shall I dispatch him for you?
thank you, but no. Whatever happens to us, I want him to live a long life alone with his cowardice.
Inigo! Inigo, where are you?
They all looked at each other as Fezzik's voice reached them, and they opened the window to see Fezzik outside with 4 white horses. The giant smiled up at them.
Ah, there you are, Inigo. I saw the prince's stables, and there they were. 4 white horses. And I thought, there are 4 of us, if we ever find a lady. Oh, hello, lady. So I took them with me, in case we ever bumped into each other. I guess we just did.
Fezzik, you did something right.
Don't worry, I won't let it go to my head.
Fezzik held out his great arms, and Wesley helped Buttercup through the window. She seemed to float in the air as she descended, and Fezzik caught her with ease. As Inigo prepared to jump down as well, he turned to Wesley.
You know, it's very strange. I've been in the revenge business so long. Now that it's over, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life.
Have you ever considered piracy? You'd make a wonderful Dread Pirate, Roberts.
With that, Wesley hopped out of the window, leaving Inigo with a surprised but intrigued look on his face, before he too jumped down into Fezzik's arms. They rode to freedom, and as dawn arose, Wesley and Buttercup knew they were safe. A wave of love swept over them, and as they reached for each other,
What?
no, it's kissing again. You don't want to hear it.
I don't mind so much.
Okay. Let's see. Since the invention of the kiss, there have been 5 kisses that were rated the most passionate, the most pure. This one left them all behind. The end. Now, I think you ought to go to sleep.
Okay.
Okay? Okay? Okay. All right. So long, kid.
Hey, Grandpa, maybe you could come over and read it again to me tomorrow?
As you wish. Thank you for listening to our audio drama presentation of The Princess Bride. Wesley was played by Emmy Lowe. Buttercup was played by Kailey Reyes. Inigo Montoya was played by Celeste English. Fezzik was played by Joel Guttman. Vizzini was played by Cam Griffin. Prince Humperdinck was played by Cory Blauser. Count Rugen, the clergyman, medic, king, and assistant brute were played by Hayes Converse. Miracle Max, the ancient Boer, mother, and queen were played by Taylor Starnes. The kid, Valerie, and Yellen were played by Frangi. The grandfather was played by me, Sean Robert. The understudy for this performance was Mary Rivette. Audio engineering was done by John H. Baker. Script adaptation was done by Joel Guttman. We are pleased to announce that next Saturday, October 31st, we will be performing the classic radio drama The War of the Worlds. And on Saturday, November 21st, we will be doing a radio drama performance of Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Both performances will begin at 4 p.m. Eastern. For more information and other nerdy content, please follow Digital Era Entertainment on Facebook and Twitter. Our past radio drama performances are available on Digital Era Entertainment's YouTube channel, and this performance will be uploaded in a bit over a week. Finally, the entire cast and everyone at Digital Era Entertainment would like to congratulate our beloved Buttercup Kailey on her wedding next weekend. We know that you and your Wesley will live happily ever after, for nothing can stop true love. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Stay informed, and we'll see you next time on Digital Era Twitch.
Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us across social media for updates. Thanks for watching!